Well, if I were to walk into a preschool classroom today, and if I were to say to the preschool kids, hey, everyone, raise your hand if you think you're a genius. My guess is 100% of those hands are going to go up. Now, if I were to walk into a kindergarten classroom, I think that percentage might go down a little bit. How about a first grade classroom, third grade, high school? How about if I asked you in here, how many of you would raise your hand if I said, how many of you in here feel like you're a genius today? Well, let's look at what Mr. Einstein said. He said, everyone is a genius. But if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? But is it true? Are we really all geniuses? Let's take a look at some geniuses that we've all heard of. As you look at this list, many of us are familiar with, some maybe more than others. But I wonder what would happen if J.K. Rowling decided, you know what, I think I'm going to be a musician. None of us would ever have gotten to experience the Harry Potter series. Or what if Tiger Woods decided that he was a wrestler of alligators? Sounds bizarre, but those are classic cases of people who would be fish climbing trees instead of using their natural gifts and talents. They're geniuses. So how do you find out what your genius style is? Because I know you've been sitting here listening to a lot of talks today, and something needs to be about you. So let's make this about you right now. As you look at these different photographs, you can see that there's a variety of different talents. Some of these people are athletic, musical, maybe artistic. In some cases here, I know that there's a lot of visual spatial people who like to build things, are mechanically inclined. Maybe you're super social, like our first speaker seemed to be. Intrapersonal, very reflective. Or maybe you're into nature and you like to go fishing or hunting. Now, how does it help you determine your genius style? Well, let's take a look at the brain. I've been really lucky in my field. I get to look at functional MRIs all the time, and I do a lot of studying on the brain because I'm so interested in how do we get everyone to discover their own genius? How do we get everyone in school to feel smart and feel important? If we look at the left side of the brain, we see that the left side of the brain is pretty dominant in logic, analysis, organization, knowledge, facts, and details, where the right side of the brain is more into emotion, intuition, spirituality, art, music, and the big picture. Okay, let's look at the brain now, thinking about genius styles. So for those of you that are familiar with Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences, he helped us to understand that there's really more than just traditional ways of thinking. I know when you were in school, maybe kids who did well in a math competition or a spelling competition would get accolades. But students that were good at drawing or music or maybe even sports, yeah, those were cool, but that didn't really mean you were smart. Well, according to Gardner's theory, that's actually not true. If you look at the left side of the brain, that's where our linguistic style, our ability to read and write comes in, or logical, mathematical. But if you look at all the rest of the learning styles, where are they located? They are right brain styles. Okay, so let's go back to the interests. So let's just say that you're athletic. What I know about you as an athlete is you probably are what we call a kinesthetic learner, a very hands-on learner. And reading to you is only going to happen if you find it important. So for example, as a student, you're going to read short text, magazines, anything that you have to read for school. As an adult, you're going to get into self-help books or books that pertain to work. Musical learners are not only musically talented, but they also have an ability to have an extremely strong intuition and can perceive the needs of others. The negative side of that is sometimes they're called dramatic or overly emotional. They're also the ones, for those of you that are teachers in here, that like to tap on their desk a lot or hum while they're learning. The visual spatial learner is, unfortunately, a lot of times called attention deficit. There are daydreamers. There are creative thinkers. One of my favorite visual spatial learners that I spoke to when I asked him what he was thinking of when a teacher was talking and I could tell he wasn't paying attention, he said, oh my goodness, I am picturing a huge sunflower with a purple hippopotamus on it. I'm like, hands down, buddy, I am totally going to be focusing on what you are. I'm sorry, but 1 + 1 = 2 just isn't going to cut it for me. Our interpersonal students or people are very personal. They grow up and become entrepreneurs. They're realtors. They're out there. They like social activities. And obviously, our intrapersonal people are very philosophical, have a strong awareness of themselves, and tend to be very empathetic towards the needs of others. And finally, our nature learners. These were the most difficult for me to teach in the classroom. They're our street smart kids. And let me tell you, if you can't tell them why they're learning what they're learning, they're not going to do it. So as we look ahead, our learning style affects how we process. Now, I want you to look at this desk closely. A friend of mine drew this for me. Which side of the desk are you? Our sequential, that's myself. I like everything organized. I like to know where it's at. My spatial friends, it looks like mass chaos to me. Now see, to me, they look unorganized. To them, I look non-creative, that I can't think outside the box. So as you can see, it's not only important for us to learn what our learning style is, but it's important for us to understand our spouse's learning style, our children's, and those that we work with. So I was lucky. I was able to write a book. I wrote the book, Unlocking the Genius Within Your Child and You. And when I wrote that, I was able to develop 4 keys that through my work and all my years of education, I was able to put together to help me not only understand my genius, but the genius of my personal children and then the students that I work with. The first one we hear a lot about in TED Talks. We hear about the importance of presence. Everybody be present. And I have to tell you, for anyone who really knows me, they will tell you that I'm not very good at this. Being present means to sit still, and I'm a type A personality. Reflect, pay attention, and just chill for a minute. Now, this came to play for me when I was a middle school teacher. I worked in a small town teaching, and my first year teaching, I taught 2nd grade. I taught 2nd grade for 3 years, and then I moved up to 5th grade, and then I was asked to teach middle school. So what happens then in a small district is when you get to middle school, and you're teaching those 6th grade kids, you've already taught them once in 2nd, and you've taught them once in 5th. So I knew these kids, piece of cake. And I started applying all of my educational strategies on these middle school kids. Everything that I had learned in college to do, I did. Only guess what? It wasn't working. Finally, one of my students came up to me and he said, you know what? We love you. We loved you in 2nd grade. We loved you in 5th grade. But that stuff's not working here. We're in middle school now. So I said, okay. He said, watch us. Just watch. That day is when I became a teacher. Because on that day, I started to watch. And I saw, when students tell me that they need music on in the background to concentrate, you know what? They do. Doodling on the paper to help them focus does help them to focus. If they say I'm boring, I am. And I started to learn to really watch. And then it not only worked with those kids in that classroom, but it worked with my own children. I learned that temper tantrums aren't necessarily just behavior. I learned that with a friend, the way that they perceive the world is different than mine. Not that mine isn't the best way. So I learned that by being present and watching, I was able to discover the genius in other people. The second one is listening. You know, I don't know if your parents ever told you God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I really believe that's true. Listening has helped me in my career tremendously. I own a company called Excel Achievement Center. And in that company, I founded it because I wanted to have one-on-one education for kids. And I wanted to help everyone discover their genius. So I hired teachers with master's degrees. And I used best practice. And I started to watch. And I started to listen. And I started to notice that 1 in 5 of those kids that were coming to me were not reading at grade level. And this did not make any sense to me because they were smart. They had average to above average IQs, but they were struggling even in a one-on-one setting, even with best practice. So I started to listen to what they said. And you know what I learned about? I learned about this thing called dyslexia. I learned that 1 in 5 Americans have it, and they are not the kids that see things backwards. In this room, 1 in 5 of you probably have dyslexia. And I learned how to teach those kids based on listening to not what my textbooks told me, not what best practice told me, but based on what they told me. Which brings me to the third one, validation. Anyone who knows me knows that I like to be validated for my thoughts and feelings. I don't like to be judged. I don't know about any of you. Anybody out here like to be judged? I don't think any of us do. We want to know that when we're trying hard, it's validated. I had a little boy come to the center 2 weeks ago. He's a first grader. Classroom teachers told me he's a huge behavior problem. He's sent to the principal's office 4 times a week because he just doesn't want to do it. So I brought the little boy in and started working with him. He's a first grader, but he's reading at the 3rd grade level, and he can do 2nd and 3rd grade math. He's very smart. When I asked him to write, do you know what he told me? Oh, my brain is starting to hurt. So I started to investigate, found out that he has a language processing issue. Getting ideas from his head out to the page is very difficult for him. He also has delayed fine motor skills. He's not a behavior problem. He's just being asked every day to do something he's not ready to do yet. And so when I told him that, when I shared that with him, can you imagine the look on this little first grader? Because now he saw, somebody doesn't think I'm the naughty kid. Someone's telling me I'm smart, and I said, honey, you're going to learn to write, and it's not going to take you very long. Do you want to learn to write? He said, I really do. So just validating him took such a huge weight off his shoulders, as I know it does for all of us. And finally, teaching. Now, I'm a teacher, and I think everything I have to say is very important. Ask anyone who knows me. And so I think we default to teaching. We want people to hear, well, here's my learning style. Hear me. Know me. But Stephen Covey wrote in his book, 7 Steps of Highly Effective People, 7 Habits, of highly effective people. 5th habit is seek first to understand and then to be understood. And I think that if we can do that before we teach our wealth of knowledge, then we are going to be able to not only see the genius in others, but see the genius within ourselves. And hopefully, like Albert Einstein says, we can all be fish who swim and don't climb trees. Thank you.